issues. Bear with me. Well, we're going to say that as soon as we know that we're on, then we're on, right? And then I have a few remarks. Oh, the first thing I'm going to tell you right now is to turn off your phones so we get no buzzing, beeping. Actually, I'm going to turn mine off right now. See? There you go. And as soon as we are we on? Yes, we are. Oh my God, we're on. Okay, so this I have to read because it's written. Well, welcome to the Smithsonian Latino Center's Young Ambassadors Program, Washington Week. We're streaming live from DC. Hey! And this is our conversation on representing Latino communities in media. We're pleased to be able to share a part of this leadership development program with our public through this live cast. And we would like to thank Ford Motor Company Fund for their continued support of this program. My name is Alberto Ferreras. I'm a writer and a filmmaker. And with me, we have, this is great because we have kind of like every possible discipline. We have like theater, film, TV, radio, print, screen, station, page. And so I'm going to start with Shirley Rumierk. You might have seen her. You've probably seen her. I got to tell you, the first time I saw her was on Broadway, and she was in a show called Latinologues, which might have been the first Latino Broadway show. Like, this is before In the Heights. This is way back. And she was like the best on that. No, I swear to God.
I paid him to say that.
She was with Eugenio Derbez and Rick Najera. Rick, I don't know if you know him, but everybody knows Rick. He was one of the writers of Mad TV when you guys were born, I guess. But very talented guy, and he put on this amazing show, which was really trailblazing. And Shirley was an amazing part of that show. And then on top of that, she's been on film and television for many years. You might have seen her on Blue Bloods, or wait a second, you've been in Ugly Betty.
I did a little.
Recently, she's in 11:55, the movie. She's going to be one of the stars of Shine, which is a new Rise.
But I like Shine too.
Well, because she shines and she rises.
Good save, I like that.
Because it's a new show, so we're just getting familiar with the whole thing. But she's going to be on Rise on NBC, and she's a writer also. And I gotta say, Shirley has been producing these videos for Facebook and YouTube, I guess, for a while. She's created videos that have gone viral that were picked up by Funny or Die.
One of them, yeah.
There you go. So that's Shirley. Now, Gisele Regatao, she has worked for WNYC, the best job in the universe. It is. Senior editor of Culture.
Culture, one of my jobs. Yes.
And she worked with Soundcheck. If you don't listen to any form of NPR, get out. Tell me. I mean, I do think that radio is saying so much more than television these days. And actually, Gisele is producing the first bilingual podcast, which is Celestial Bloods. And is it suitable for a young audience?
Yes, there are some curse words, but it's also very...
You need to be exposed to it.
But very few.
And Lalo Alcaraz, who is a legend, he truly is. He's I think, better known as a political cartoonist, but he's a writer, director, a producer, Border Town. Does that ring a bell? This. And because we're ending with you, if you want to show Coco right now, and then hit the first question,
sure.
Which is basically, when I was reading the questions that we were discussing, I was thinking about the word assimilation. I don't know why, but I was feeling that to a certain extent, even though we've all created products that are mainstream in a way, we kind of we resist assimilation. Am I right?
Very good. For myself, I was just having this conversation over tequila shots yesterday with Vincent Valdez, the painter, Chicano painter, and how we. By the way, I just figured out that I can have a Facebook Live channel going on too. So this is on my page. But me and Vincent Valdez were talking about how we were both kind of outside of the box. And he is a fine artist and a painter, and me as a cartoonist and activist who thinks he's a fine artist, you know? And how and also because we're Chicanos, we really don't fit into a lot of boxes, and that I have problems with mainstream media, even though for 25 years I've been doing editorial cartoons for the editorial page, and it's hard for me to win awards. I don't think I suck, you know. I work hard as anybody else. I don't work at a paper, but my stuff is nationally syndicated, and I do have a daily comic strip. And the resistance to it, though, has been, you know, huge. Even here, somebody asked me, were you ever in the Washington Post? I said, well, actually, they considered my strip, and I think they had like a competition where you vote. We always lose on that one. You know, the brown person always loses when you put it out to a general audience to vote. You're out. A comic strip better have a talking doggy or a kitty cat, and then it'll get in for sure, you know. And then, but the Washington Post editors said, you know, we have our Latinos over here aren't Mexican, so we don't want that strip. You know, we have Salvadorans over here, and that was their exact quote. You know, like, and my strip is about national issues. You know, it's about. You know, it's not a specific strip to Mexican Americans, and the punchlines are never in Spanish. You know, you have no excuse to not like my strip other than you disagree with me and you want me deported. You know, so but yeah, this assimilation thing, we fight it because as artists, you know, we create our vision of our work the way we see it, and we use our culture. Vincent does, I do. And what we want to see for our community. So we fight against that box.
I feel that this is interesting because you guys will grow and thrive and make a lot of money, and eventually, as soon as now, if you want to do it on social media, you're going to have a microphone in your hand and you're going to have the opportunity to voice the concerns of your community or not. And I think that everybody here, no matter where, no matter how, is like, oh, but don't forget the Brazilians, don't forget the Puerto Ricans, don't forget the other. Because in essence, the one thing that I think connects us all, regardless, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Brazil, whatever, is that we are the other. Here we are. Anyway, and that's good. It's good to be the other. It's big. So, yeah, Lalo wants to show you some of his work.
Show some cartoons. Here you see President, what's his face, at the in Israel, at the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Thank you, Jesus, for building this wall that keeps the Mexicans out of Israel. Here he is, Pigpen, 2017. We got out of the Paris Accords. Make America Great Again, another environmental cartoon. Here's with Wonder Woman, The Lasso of Truth. I can't. Take Your President to Work Day. Someone needs to be changed. And I mean that on many levels. Here's Jeff Sessions. I would never betray my country. And I'm not sure which country he represents. Here's a hard one with the last mass shooting. I forget which one it was. It was just any mass shooting.
Right here.
You know, yeah. The base. Actually, this was from the baseball game shooting just down. And here is Donald Trump calling for unity. You know, saying "Tone it down, loser," and then he's got every nasty thing that he said on his shirt. And then talk about not getting it. Somebody tweeted at me and said, "Please do not show Obama in a news." And I'm like, you don't get it. And Russian nesting lawyers, because if you notice, like, Trump's lawyer has a lawyer, and his lawyer has got a lawyer, and they're
Oh my God.
so in this case they're lawyering down instead of up, right? So, and this was the health care plan, the Republican. Anybody watch Stranger Things? Yeah, that's the Demogorgon. And now I'm going to show you. So I do these political cartoons, and I've been doing them for a long time. And I also work in Hollywood as a writer. And you know, I try to pick. I mean, it sounds dumb, but I try to only work on projects that will feature Latino characters. And so, because I'm a cartoonist mainly, and I want to keep doing that forever till I die. My retirement program as a cartoonist is drop dead at my drawing table. That's like the Charles Schultz program. And so I want to keep doing that until, like, you know, my bones break. So but I also work in Hollywood and work on projects like Border Town, which is on Netflix now. Please watch it. It's an animated show. And then recently, well, actually for the last 2 years, I've been working on the Coco film for Pixar, the Day of the Dead film. We're going to show, I feel weird now. I feel weird that, well, it's only Facebook Live, so I don't feel like I'm doing an excessive plug for Disney and Pixar. They're everywhere anyway, so they don't need my help. But in case you haven't seen it, I'm going to show the trailer, and then we can talk a little bit about it. I'll stop gobbling up everyone's time. I'll turn it off.
I have to sing. I have to play. The music, it's not just in me. It is me. When life gets me down, I play my guitar. The rest of the world may follow the rules, but I must follow my heart. You know that feeling like there's a song in the air and it's playing just for you? A feeling so close, you will reach out and touch it. I never knew I could want something so much, but it's true. Never underestimate the power of music. No one was going to hand me my future. It was up to me to reach for my dream, grab it tight, and make it come true. All right, who's in there?
I'm sorry. What's going on? I'm just dreaming.
Yeah, yay Pixar, man. So I'm a consultant on that film. I'm also Disney's biggest critic, and that's why I was hired, I think. And not to shut me up, but to advise them on creating a movie that will work for U.S. Latino audiences, and any other issues that will come up, you know, for my expertise, which is my goal, representation of our community in the media. And so, you know, I was totally apprehensive at first, but after a few martinis and steaks, no, I actually interviewed them first to say, you know, are you going to listen to me when I tell you something's wrong? And they said, absolutely. That's your job to, you know, basically talk shit, you know, and hold us accountable. And then, secondly, I said, are you going to have brown facing on this? You know, which is the practice of having white actors doing minority roles, or in this case, the voices. They said, absolutely not. I go, okay, I'm in. You know, I have a 13-year-old daughter who I want her to see this movie and not be embarrassed to be Mexican and to actually be proud, maybe even to, movies and things are not the end-all thing. You should be proud of your culture for cultural reasons, not for mainstream Hollywood's take on your culture, but it's going to be out there. It is a giant cultural force, and I'm doing my bit to try to make sure that it's not damaging, harmful, racist, and maybe actually a little positive. So
When is
the premiere is on Thanksgiving weekend. They didn't want it to be released on Day of the Dead because they didn't want it to be next to Halloween. They don't want people to say this is Mexican Halloween, yay, and whatever. And they are doing the premiere in Mexico on Day of the Dead at a film festival. So they're doing the world premiere there, which I think is unheard of and really respectful. And they're bending over backwards because Disney had screwed up earlier, and which is the reason I'm involved, is they tried to trademark the term Dia de los Muertos, which all of us here would go like, what a no-brainer. You don't do that to somebody else's culture, or even like you can't trademark Christmas. I mean, like, I don't know what these people were thinking. They were lawyers, So I did a cartoon on it. It was a big part of the reason that they got like a big wake-up call and said, we really got to do this movie right.
Let's Gisele, tell us about what you're doing. Tell you. She had the best job in the universe. I don't know why, not kidding. But she's up to something very interesting. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing and why are you doing it?
Yeah. So let me start by asking, who listens to podcasts? Oh, several people. Who listens to public radio? You don't have to listen to public radio. Don't listen to him. Although I love public radio. So I've worked in public radio most of my career, 10 years at WNYC, 3 years at KCRW in Los Angeles. And I was very much the minority in a very white world, right? And in my job, I was always trying to be the person making a difference. So either with the sources we interviewed, I would always be like, where's the Latino guest? Where's the African-American guest? Can we get an Asian guest? How about a woman? The people we had on the air, we had on our stories, but also the people I hired. But it was very much that feeling that I think I made some difference because I was in management positions, so I was able to make some difference, but it was still a very white world. And public radio is still, it's changing now, but it's still a very much white world. Minorities are a very small minority, especially media companies, right? Lalo, in general, the world is a very white world, but especially in media, especially in journalism. So when I left WNYC, I wanted to do my own project, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it in Spanish. And nobody has ever done that in the United States. And I approached KCRW, where I used to work, because it's a station in LA, and I said to them, I want to do this. I want to do like a radio novela, like a telenovela for radio in Spanish. Would you be interested? And I know the president there because I worked there. I had the good relationship. She replied in 5 minutes, said yes. So it was the first time that I was able to get a major public radio station in the country that only has done things in English to release a product that is in Spanish. So this podcast is a fiction podcast. It's in Spanish is Sangre Celestial. It was written by a Mexican playwright who lives in the United States, who's a friend of mine, very talented, together with an African-American playwright. All the cast is Hispanic from all over Latin America. And we released in both languages. I said, well, I have KCRW, so let me do it in both languages. So, and I did this because really I felt like there are thousands of podcasts in English and very few in Spanish. And I felt like for us to change the world, we have to be that change. And I felt compelled to do something. I am tired of hearing podcasts that are very similar to each other. A lot of white men on the microphone. And I just decided to take on my own hands to do something different. Thankfully, I was able to get a public radio station to support me, to fund the project, so I could pay everybody to do it. But I was considering like doing it myself, raising money myself, trying to find funders and etc. And I'm glad it exists, and I hope it is the first of many. Podcasts are just starting in Latin America, and here in the U.S. in Spanish, there are still very few. So my goal is I think the more we see of each other out there, the more we feel encouraged to do our stuff and to put our culture. I wanted gringos to listen to a radionovela. So it's it's done by Latinos, but it's in English. So if you're interested in Latino culture, it's a product done by Hispanics.
And speaking of putting Latino faces on the screen, let's move to Shirley, who's been fighting the good fight for a few years now.
It's interesting what you say. I think the way we empower our community is by creating the content ourselves, because no one is going to do it for us. It's not someone else's priority. So if it's our priority and it is an urgent need to get our stories, our faces out there, we've got to create it ourselves. And what I've learned is that through social media, through access to technology, how many of you have grabbed your phone and do a little, story live and posted it? Yeah, you do it yourselves every day.
Right
and
now.
he's doing it right now, and you can do that yourself. And I've found that to be liberating and inspirational. I'm an actor, but I've learned that as a Latino, I can't just be an actor. I also have to be a writer, a producer, a director. If I don't feel confident in one of those titles, I collaborate with those who I think are strong in that, and then we create what we need to create. And so I create my own political satirical sketches that at first was just I just grabbed a camera, and my husband and I just started to record something and post it up that we thought would just be for 40 of our friends, and then a whole lot more people saw it on social media than we expected. And what's exciting about that is that you feel empowered. Your voice is out there. Latina, as a woman, as a Latina who comments about politics, it's usually a male-dominated space. And comedy tends to be a male-dominated space, so it's empowering to cross those borders. And yes, you're right about it's male-dominated.
And we're going to continue with you, but wanted to make a little introduction to the next question. This is absolutely. I'm sorry. I have to share this with the world because it's painful. In addition to what I do, because I'm a freelancer, every once in a while I get a call to do a voiceover audition, right? And rarely I get a call to do some kind of on-camera thing. And they, a year and a half ago, they called me to audition for a commercial in Spanish. And then I got a call back, which means that they liked you, and you're like, oh my God, they love me, they really love me. And then you're so excited, and you go back, and it was a 30-second commercial, 3 guys looking at a microwave oven, and because I'm a director as well, I know a lot of actors, especially Latino actors, especially non-union Latino actors, and you know them all. They're all on speed dial. It's
They're all calling me for jobs.
So I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine, $2,000, to do a little nothing, right? And I walked in, and I didn't know the actress I walked in with. And it was a very simple scene, looking at a microwave, and it was like, what are you going to eat? I'm going to have rice and beans, and the other one would say something else, the usual. And we're standing there, and the director is sitting behind the table, the producer, the agency people. This is December 2015, right? And they go, action. And the guy to my left goes, ¿Qué es lo que vas a... I go, cut. Sorry, my apologies. And I look at him, I'm like, dude, you don't speak Spanish. What are you doing here? Okay, one more time. 3, 2, 1. ¿Qué es lo que vas a comer? And I'm like, arroz con habichuelas, me lo hizo mi esposa, blah, blah, blah. Then the one to my right goes, Dondi is... How can you do a scene for 3 actors when 2 of them don't speak the language? Now, this is the sad part. Nobody behind that table could tell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's happening.
And if anybody could, they wouldn't, because they were not up enough in the ladder to say, those 2 actors, they cannot do it because they don't speak the language. And this happened in 2015.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why it's so important to get people behind the camera, the creators, the gatekeepers, the people developing content
So
that
what
are
are
Latino.
the obstacles? Wait, what has happened to you?
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
What was the commercial for? Was it for microwave
No.
or was it for language
No,
lessons?
No, it was,
Should have been.
damn, should I say it?
Oh.
Oh, you don't have to say the
You
brand.
have to
Just
say
say
the
what it
brand.
is.
Yeah, the product.
It was something like the lottery. How's that? Something they're always trying to sell us.
Right. Buy
hope I win.
$1 and a drink.
Exactly. So what has happened to you? Tell us a little bit about the obstacles that you encounter.
Well, some of the obstacles that I've encountered contending with stereotypical Latino roles and at the same time trying to make a living as an artist. I've also had to contend with, much like you, I'm an alum of a scholarship, high school scholarship program that was recruits talented Latino and African American students in New York City in underserved neighborhoods and places them in private high schools. And I've had to contend with comments about, oh, you're just an affirmative action pick, and completely negating all the hard work that I've done. And then the other obstacle is internalizing that, thinking, well, maybe they're right, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe it's... and the other obstacle is survivor's guilt. Growing up in an underserved, and I don't know if a couple of you feel this, but growing up in an underserved neighborhood, so many of my peers, so talented, so bright, but for some reason or another, they just didn't get the lucky breaks that I got, and always wondering, wow, what could have their lives have been if they had just gotten the opportunities that I got. And those obstacles, I've turned into incredible journeys and ways for me to be who I am now, which is unapologetically me, which is completely proud of my achievements, and with a deep passion to use the hard-won opportunities that I've been blessed with, to use my skills, to use the privilege that I have to help my community as best as I can. That's sort of taking a negative and turning it into a positive, and sort of going back to my neighborhood and looking for the kid who grew up with me who didn't get the chance that I've gotten.
Gisele, okay, you and I have something in common, that the color is in the voice.
That's on top. That's what I was going to say.
Gotta tell you, man, you might think you're white, but you open your mouth and you're not.
Yeah,
You
I'm
are
not only Latina, I'm Brazilian, but I'm also foreigner. I came to the U.S. as an adult already. I did my college degree in Brazil. I have a journalism degree in Brazil. I was already working as a journalist when I came to New York. And I did a master's here, and I started working, and I was looking for a job. So looking for a job, and I couldn't get a job. And I have to say, like, you guys are already, like, way ahead of me. Like, the fact that you are in this program, you're, like, already so accomplished. And I'm sure you'll do great, but it might not be easy for different reasons as well. In my case, I had somebody actually tell me in an interview, it's like, oh, you went to the best university in Brazil, you worked for the major newspaper. This is not worth anything here. And I was like, awesome. What am I going to do? So I was listening to public radio at the time, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go volunteer there, because to get people to know me, whatever it's going to take. And I called them up, and they said, sure, come volunteer. But I was already a working journalist. I had worked as a journalist for a few years. So I go to volunteer for a show they produced every day, Which Way LA, and To the Point. And I started working as I do as a journalist, making calls, doing interviews. And they're like, wait a minute, you know how to do this work? It's like, oh, yeah, I do. So a month later, they offered me a job. And if it wasn't for that job, I don't know if I would have gotten any jobs. So, but it took
That's
me...
a great show, too.
I know. But it took me working for free for a month to be able to prove myself. And I hope you don't have to do that. But in my case, that's what I had to do. Yes. No,
I, you know, this is going to sound silly, but when you speak with an accent, like I do, a New York accent, yeah, right? You know how everybody's like, call Congress. Every time I call to like complain about, you know, the other act, every year I get, when you get nervous, it's all Spanish for me.
Well,
It's
just cuss
so-
them out.
When
Yeah.
I get
Just cuss 'em out.
It's so-
gracias,
It's so interesting. It's
Is
so-
anybody language here first language Spanish as
yeah.
opposed to English?
So
Wow.
Oh.
it's so interesting
You
that
probably don't have accents. Anybody with an accent?
Wow.
Barely.
It's so
You do?
interesting that you mentioned about the voice because I think when I was your age, I remember seeing other peers. They're very active in their communities, like total activists, and I would think, oh, I'm not as active as they are. I'm more studious and into music, into theater. But I realized that when you are that I was an activist, an advocate, and an activist before I even realized it, because I had to translate for my mom. I still translate for her. She can speak English with her neighbors, but when it comes to official settings, se enreda. She gets tongue-tied, and I started to realize the power of my voice when I would translate for her, and how the person listening, English-speaking monolingual, who was judging her would change attitude when I would jump in and drop a couple of choice SAT vocab words here and there, and was knowledgeable about the situation, how they would shift. And then I started to notice, what would happen if I become an actor and do this for other characters? But that you should realize that you have a lot of power in your voice, even just when you do it for family members.
Lalo, you were going to talk about obstacles.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's why I grew up pissed off, because I was, my dad died when I was 13, so it was just me and my mom, and I became that little adult. All immigrant children, that's what happens to us, first generation. We become that little adult that translates at the doctor's offices and at the bank and all that, But, I mean, my mom eventually learned English. My mom and dad met at an ESL class in the 60s. That's how they met, and in San Diego and on the border. And it only took her, 50 years to learn English. But she did all right. Yeah, I think I experienced that same thing of, realizing that people would take advantage of you if you don't speak English. And then here's this little kid, I translated before my dad died. I mean, I translated for both of them, But, so I was, 10 years old doing that.
The other side of that
Ridiculous.
coin, which is equally screwed up, is when you are looking for support on your Latino community, the Spanish speakers, and they look at you and like, ay, que mal hablas. And they judge you
Yes.
because your Spanish is not good enough. And I got to tell you, when I first moved to the States, and I met someone named Gonzalez, Ramirez, Rodriguez, and I was like, you don't speak Spanish? Really? And like now, it took me a while to understand that when you grow up a Latino and your parents speak Spanish and you don't, it's because you went through trauma, heavy duty. I've met people who, Patricia, she went to kindergarten, she was speaking only Spanish, and that day she came back home and she never opened her mouth again because she was made fun of when she was a 4-year-old. And she said, I'll never speak this damn language again. And she blocked it. And she understands, but she cannot speak back. I hope I'm not, slandering, pero Rosy Perez, she understands Spanish, she will not talk back. I don't know if it has changed, but when we did Habla with her years ago, she was like, no. And we have to look at that experience with compassion, no matter if it was yours. That's what compassion is for. So it's not your problem, but you understand that it's somebody else's problem. So what other obstacles have you, I know you've had a couple. But if you want to expand on something that you feel is relevant for our crowd, they're starting there.
Well, I had all these that we talked about. There will always be that person that will tell you that you're an affirmative action person, man. I had that. One of my classmates in college, I was in, I worked I was tracked at my high school to vocational stuff, right? And so, luckily, they had these courses, vocational courses called graphic arts. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And then I get in there, and it's how to work at a print shop, all right? Which, if I learned how to work at a print shop, and I paid, for me and my mom, through high school for 2 years, and then all the way through college. I paid for it by working at a print shop, full-time, near full-time. And so I turned that negative into a positive. That got me all straight A's in all my art classes, which I took a lot of them because half my schedule was that. And that sneaked me into college because of the one college counselor who's African American. He was the tennis coach, Coach Edge. Cool name, huh?
Yeah, nice.
He was the one. All my other white counselors were like, "Oh, maybe you could go to junior college or whatever." This Coach Edge man was like, "Why did you got to take this class and this class and this class?" I'm like, "You got to take classes to go to college?" I didn't know that. I didn't have anybody at home telling me. He made me take the classes, and I got into the San Diego State University, and there I kicked everybody's ass in the art department. I graduated with distinction, and I got into UC Berkeley graduate program for architecture. And at right before graduation, like when I told my classmates in the art department that I was about my plans, and there would always be people dissuading me, like the older returning. They're always white men. I'm sorry, it's just not to generalize, but the old white male students were always telling me, "You don't need to go to graduate school. You don't need to do that. They're always telling you no, no, no." And so when I announced what I was doing, that I had one, she was actually a white female. She was the one that told me, "Oh, you got into Berkeley?" Oh, it was affirmative action. So at graduation, they announced, "You graduated with distinction in your major. Stand up." And I was right next to her, and I went, "Woo!"
Take that.
So that's how you feel the rest of your life when you try to achieve, and people will always be trying to put you down, but F them.
Yeah.
We get them.
The ultimate, I think, the blessing of again being the other, if you want to take that or not, if you want to assume that responsibility or not, is that you kind of have a job which is to, especially when you speak the language and you understand the culture and you understand both cultures, that you maybe should consider becoming a bridge of cultures, and because I don't think that the other is aware of the other. Wow, this is getting a little complicated. The dominant culture doesn't understand your needs because it doesn't identify with you. And if your mom or your father can't speak up because they won't be heard because they don't understand the language or whatever, or their accent, then guess what? Maybe it's going to be up to you to make the dominant culture understand that we are the same. I came up with a great phrase, I think.
The other.
The other.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm going to see that in a cartoon. I'm going to say.
I like that.
Yeah.
No, I said that your neighbor's problems are your problems, and that doesn't mean that you're going to go to your neighbor to say, what are you doing in there? No, but if your neighbor's house burns, chances are yours is going to get a little dusty, to say the least. Pollution, dirty water doesn't stop on the border.
Yeah.
Poverty, it trickles. I'm not sure if down, but certainly spreads out. I mean, when your neighbor is going through a problem, chances are you're going to have the same problem, even if you feel like your reality is completely different. And one of the things that I'm really concerned about is this lack of empathy, this divisiveness, because it's not going to help anybody at the end of the day.
Well, I think that's where the media and the arts are in a fantastic position to create that empathy. I mean, as an actor, when you take on a character, whether it's the villain or the hero, you don't judge it. You never do. What you do is, through your imagination and a series of techniques, you connect with a character's fears, their hopes, their joy, and my job as an actor is to communicate that to the audience and get you to connect with that and hopefully realize that we're not all that different, and therefore we should help each other and not distance each other with preconceived labels. And that's, I think, where the arts, and whether it's a character that I play from a scripted show, or it's a documentary, a story about someone in a particular situation, or it's through humor, because humor has a fantastic way of really talking about what's uncomfortable and bringing it up to the surface. That's the opportunities that you all have as future leaders, and that we're involved in utilizing the media to create that empathy and making those bridges happen.
Now, how often do you go back to the director and go like, excuse me, I was reading the script and I noticed, does that happen? For those of you who want to be actors, just be mindful.
Yeah, no, it's a tricky balance, because sometimes when you're low man on the totem pole and you're like, how do I go up to this person who wrote this copy for a commercial and let them know that this is a terrible translation, or let them know that this is incredibly culturally insensitive. So it's treading lightly. Sometimes you feel it out. If you feel that someone is receptive, a director is receptive and open, then you can approach them. And other times, as you've progressed in your respective careers, you will then be in a position to then sort of say, hey, no, not acceptable. And other times, and this is something that I've found, I call it racial PTSD. Sometimes I need to check myself, because I'll get like automatically angry. Wait, they're going to look at me and they're going to think I'm the crazy Latina here. Let me slow down and understand that maybe this is the empathy. Maybe they're just not aware, and therefore I shouldn't go coming down their throats.
Well, I have no checks. I have no checks. I'm like that all the time. Yeah. Can I say real quick? You guys weren't even born when the show 6 Feet Under came out, but Jill Soloway, who directs Transparent. She worked on 6 Feet Under, and she was a writer and producer, and they were shooting a scene at one of the death scenes, right? They opened up the show. It's a show about a mortuary of family, and the first scene is always a character dies, and it's kind of like just the entry into the show. It's just, and so this viejita died at a hair salon, and the hairstylist was like a trans Latino guy, right? Who was super flamboyant character and all this, and they called me and my writing partner in to, I think we got paid like $50 or $75 to go and just sit in on the scene and just give suggestions and say, and it's shot in LA, but it was like some Puerto Rican type, the actor was Puerto Rican, and was, all his stuff was, like Puerto Rican based Spanish that was, saying. And so we gave notes and direction, and it was great. But there was the assistant director to her was a white guy, and he was pissed that we were there. And he was openly standing next to me going on the set saying, well, why did they have to call anybody here? Like, we could do this. And he's like telling me to my face. That's how bold it is. Like, no manners, no nothing. They're so angry about a little. We were there. Like I said, we made $50. A little tiny bit of inclusion of Jill Soloway, who's great, trying to get it real and authentic, and that guy was resistant. And that's Hollywood right there in a nutshell. Till today, still,
I think it's always dangerous. I don't think that one should walk around with a loaded gun, waiting for it. Like, aha! You look at it. But it is good to be aware that it happens. When in one of my first jobs, a vice president of the company told me, like, why did we hire you? I was writing Spanish for a TV show for Latin America, but it was produced in the U.S. And she was like, why did we hire you? The super of my building speaks Spanish. And with my then very poor English, I was like, actually, I don't think I was able to reply. But I did call my boss in Spanish and say, mira, yo no puedo hablar con esa vieja. Me dijo esto, así que if you want to keep me in the company, please don't make me sit with her again, because I don't think that I can
not strangle her.
It does happen, but it's not everybody. It's not all the time. What has been your experience?
Well, I want to talk about what another power I think we have to make the change, which is as consumers, right? Of everything we the plays we see, the cartoons we like,
shows
we watch.
tickets we buy.
First of all, the most important of all, of course, is a voter, right? Make sure you vote, your family members vote, because we're only going to make a difference when we start to matter. And, I think the fact that Latinos did not vote as much in this past election made a difference. And it was very upsetting. And I think the power we have to change things is to make sure we are heard. And so if you buy books by Latino writers or other minorities that you might be interested in, I feel like that's what I do for myself, because those are the voices I'm interested in. So if I want to see a play, I want to see a play by a female playwright or with a Latino cast. Same for books, same for movies. Look at Wonder Woman. Finally, a superhero movie with a woman, directed by a woman, and she has an accent. She's an Israeli actress, and it's the top of the box office. So what if you stop going to see movies that don't have strong female characters or Hispanic characters? So I feel like that's the power we have to change, to use, more than even our daily struggles in the companies we work, because it is a daily struggle. It's getting better, but it's still a long way to go.
I have another quick short story. My experience trying to promote Coco. Part of it has been to be online and see what people comment on when they put the trailers out. And at the very beginning, people were saying, "Oh my God, this is a ripoff of the Book of Life," which is the previous Day of the Dead movie, which came out. And I found I got so tired of hearing it. I said I would type in, "Okay, you're mad about 2 Day of the Dead themed movies, but you're not mad about 25 narco movies that are out. Like every other show is a narco show. Every other movie it features Latinos as drug dealers." But you probably didn't complain about that. You probably went to that, So that's we as a community, we have to stop nitpicking the projects that do come out, nitpicking them to death. And I'm not telling you go watch crappy movies, because I don't watch crappy movies, even if they are by Latinos. But at least be supportive in a way, or do spend your money on something that you think that little voice inside your head might be imperialism gnawing at your soul and telling you hate yourself. Don't support a thing with a person that looks like you, Ignore that voice and say, well, I'm going to give this a shot, I know you guys are all going to go see Coco anyway, so. But that's an easy one, But, there's lots of projects and exactly what you said. But also, stop putting each other down too. That's a big part. And we do that subconsciously, I think, a lot as a community.
I think a lot of it's because of the pressure, because there's not a lot of accurate representation of the actual Latino population in the U.S. out there.
Yeah.
So when there is something that represents the Latino community, we were just saying, there's all this pressure that gets placed on it, with audiences' hopes and wishes and dreams of it representing all things Latino and everything. And so as an artist, it puts this unbelievable amount of pressure as well that can be stifling to get your voice out there in a creative way. So it is important to, exactly you were saying, not nitpick, support, and then with that support there'll be more, and then we'll get to see more of the intersectional stories within the Latino community coming out.
Yeah, you don't know how many Salvadorans I get in LA telling me, "Hey, when are you going to write a Salvadoran thing?" I'm like, "Why don't you write it?" I don't want to presume to write, or maybe next time I'll do a Salvadoran character with my Chicano characters and, work on it.
Okay,
but,
this is a little bit of
bubbling up.
This is the most obscure of the questions. No, I think it's just a little weird. It's like, how has your identity changed and evolved? I know, because it is tricky. It's like, we don't walk around thinking about our identities. It's like I'm going out, my bicycle, what's my identity? However,
How do we listen today?
I think that, again, when you come from a minority, and there's a dominant culture, good or bad, it doesn't matter. It's just, if you feel like an outsider, it is going to be, at some point, an issue for you. And I wonder how you guys have handled it. I mean, I grew up. I had my identity crisis when I was a kid because I was born in Spain and my family moved to Venezuela, and in Venezuela, Spaniards were an oppressed minority. One of it. Seriously,
That's
people
a switch.
Don't believe me. No, it was because of after the war, the Italians, Spaniards, and Portuguese that came to Venezuela and spoke like Spaniards were blue collar workers, and there was a lot of like, there was the assumption that there was a place for you in society. Not everybody again, but. Especially the Portuguese were really abused, and I always talk about it because I feel like I kind of like contributed a little bit, because I was so happy not to be Portuguese that you want to distance yourself from it. Dude, we're human. But like the bakeries in Venezuela most of them were owned by Portuguese immigrants, and people would call them Porto. Mira, Porto. There was all these. I saw recently an article. I'm like, Jesus, are we still doing this? Where they were like, even the Portuguese are leaving Venezuela. And I'm like, what do you mean even the what is this? So all societies have crap. And when you are part of the crappy group, there's a struggle. There's a little struggle. How do you guys manage? How do you feel now? How do you, have you seen yourself changing the way you present yourself, or you say, hi, I'm blank?
I think the only difference, and I think it comes with, for me, it came with just experiences, like I mentioned before, just being unapologetically me. I'm a Latina, raised by a single mom from an underserved, very diverse neighborhood from New York City. I saw it become gentrified. I worked my butt off for scholarships. I got into Harvard, and I'm an actor. And that I carry with me to the characters that I play, that experience, the knowledge that I have of all those worlds and the people that I've come across, and the stories that I tell. But I've never ridden on a bike and be like, today I'm going to be. I just kind of access all those parts when I'm researching a role or taking on a character. And when I write, they all just come out together, all those parts of me. But I think over time it's been unapologetic, as opposed to kind of not wanting to say where I went to college because of being afraid of how people might react or feel insecure or say affirmative action or something like that. Now it's just like, I don't care. And a lot of it's because I don't have the mental space for that anymore. I'm too busy trying to use that mental space to create opportunities for others. So that's my approach.
How about you, Gisele?
Well, I also live in New York City, which, in New York is minorities are majority. So it might be a different experience than you guys. Where do you live? Raise your hand if you live in a city where your Latinos are very much a minority. No? A majority? Most of you live in big cities then, where there are a lot of Hispanic. I feel like that changes a lot. And, as I said earlier, the fact that I have an accent, I've had situations where I feel like I was mistreated at DMV because I had an accent when I first moved here. So I definitely had those experiences. But I am proud also to be Brazilian, and I always say that. But I'm also proud to be New Yorker. And I have a son, 13 as well, and I was married to a Mexican for many years. That's why I speak Spanish. That's why I released this in Spanish. I consider myself also partially Mexican because we were together for so many years. And my son, I speak to him in Portuguese. His dad speaks to him in Spanish. And I am with his friends, and he turns to me, speaks to me in Portuguese. He's never embarrassed. So I also feel like we are in a different time. To the point we were talking earlier, people feeling embarrassed before to speak Spanish. Now he doesn't, and he speaks in Spanish to his father. And my current partner is American white, so I want to say I also like white people. It's not like I hate white people. So in my household now, it's like we speak English, we speak Portuguese, and I feel very comfortable living with this duality. I feel very comfortable feeling I am Brazilian, but I am American, and I feel very much American, and I am New Yorker, and I think it's okay to be part of different cultures. And I think it's interesting. It makes me an interesting, person with different experience. I think that's what you have to always think about, what you bring to the table. the fact that I came from like a lower middle class family in Sao Paulo, that I had grew up in a small house with three siblings. I never had a room of my own. Like, it all adds up to who I am, right? And I feel like that's important, and I don't forget that, and I just feel like I add to.
But the New York factor is very important because, I've been in New York for 27 years. I've never been told, like, don't speak, why are they speaking Spanish? Go back to your country. Like, that doesn't happen that often in New York. It does.
The climate, as we all know.
Yeah, now it's changing again.
Even in the bubble that is New York City, it's cracking, and I've been witness to it, and it's scary. And so as young leaders, I encourage you at how you identify yourself, and whatever, if you speak Spanish, you don't, to there's real fear, and you're not alone, but to continue being yourselves. It's the best. Being who you are is the best form of resistance, I think, that you can ever imagine. Being who you are and succeeding at what you do is the best form of resistance. And unfortunately, I speak to my daughter only in Spanish,
You've
and
been told?
my husband doesn't. There was a situation where my husband was judged for and name called.
He's Latino too?
Yes, for speaking to my daughter in Spanish in New York City.
Really?
Yes, and I was at a restaurant where we were laughing.
Oh, I remember.
Yes, we were at a Brazilian restaurant in Soho, and we were joking around and laughing, and the couple next to us, monolingual white, thought we were talking about them, and then proceeded to tell us to bring it down.
And then no one was ripped. Yes.
So I thought, wow, this is New York. In other towns where the Latinos are not very visible, what is that like?
Yeah, exactly.
So the fear is real. I empathize with the fear, and I understand that, but also know that I think through social media there are a lot of connections that can be made for people who may feel like they're in communities where they are, alone, but that you can do it.
Lalo, I think
That's a good one.
Here's my cartoon about Wonder Woman goes to Walmart.
Great.
It says, speaks 100 languages, and then the lady says, you speak English here, you dirty illegal alien? And Wonder Woman goes, a la chingada, pinche puta vieja racista, boom! And it's funny because I got ripped by a couple of young Chicanexes for using the word puta, and I'm like, as an artist, I'm offended when people try to tell me to police my language, right? I think that's like the worst thing you could tell an artist because it makes me say it puta 3,000 more times, right? And I think that's like a dangerous thing to tell artists what to do. We don't want the government to do it, and we shouldn't do it either. But I can defend my use of any language because I think about it when I put it into a piece. I'm not an idiot, and it just flowed out as like, Wonder Woman was cussing out this lady in Mexican Spanish. What would she say? And she would say that. But somebody wrote, why the slut shaming? And I said, Wonder Woman doesn't know how much sex this old lady's had. So, I mean.
And you're being kind of ageist calling her vieja.
Yeah, exactly. They left out all the other parts. Say illegal alien. I don't use that in language.
Yeah.
Journalists shouldn't use it. But I put it in because it's in
Exactly.
context and everything else, of course. And then violence. Boom. But anyway, if you Google racist white lady yells at people to speak Spanish and video, you'll find like about 10,000 videos of this because Latinos just pull out their cell phones
Yes.
and videotape these idiots telling us
Yes.
how to talk. But and as far as identity, real quick, I think I've become a little more less Chicano-centric and more pan-Latino as my work has spread, so I try to be, I don't water down my work, but I try to be conscious of things and other groups and, with great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
So, and also I'm excited when cartoonists in Mexico like retweet my stuff or treat me like I'm a colleague. I think that's like, I'm in awe of the political cartoonists in Mexico are the baddest ass cartoonists in Latin America, man. They get to cuss like this in the papers, which is great too, you know. But they do. It's like,
very organically brings us to social media, which is, some days I'm like, oh my god, social media is amazing, it's going to change the world. Some days I'm like, this thing is just a waste of time. But I want to know how you guys are using it, what's happening. Actually, you know what I would love? Can we play the sign language? I'm so, are you proud of that one? Are you okay with it?
Yes, yes.
Can you,
yes,
I'll
be the tech understudy. What are we looking for?
Go to YouTube.
When a couple of years back, Shirley and her husband, who's also an actor, his name is Armando Riesco. You were too young when what was the name of that movie? Garden State.
Yes.
Shirley and Armando. It was right after the Sandy hurricane. In New York City was like underwater. It was a mess, and Mayor Bloomberg kept appearing on television with a very enthusiastic sign language translator. She was basically stealing the show, this lady. She was fabulous. And then Shirley,
so
there it
there's
is.
one with a caption.
Armando and Shirley in their living room with this video that later was picked up by Funny or Die.
Yeah.
And it is, they're pretending
Oh, I
to be...
remember that press
You
conference.
remember that press conference? They're pretending to be the mayor of New York City and his interpreter into Spanish. So, yeah.
Okay, wait, sorry.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Lydia Callis, thank you for signing for us today. Okay, well, it seems like the worst of the storm has passed. Once again, New Yorkers have risen to meet yet another challenge. And this year, the areas most affected by the storm, Washington Heights seems to have taken the brunt of it. Now, but Con Ed is on the scene. They should be restoring power soon. Just electrical wires and such. Certainly our neighbors over the bridge on the Jersey Shore have gotten the worst of it. Flooding has been terrible. I spoke with Governor Christie and they seem to have it pretty under control. Now, as you all know, Wall Street and the exchange downtown took a substantial hit. Places like Battery Park have seen just record flooding. Sky, however, is doing really, really well. Today, expect to see plenty of rain, so make sure that you stay indoors and really keep yourself occupied. Spanish-speaking friends, para bailar la bamba, donde está la biblioteca, yo quiero Taco Bell. Thank you, and stay safe, New York.
I think that is an excellent example of viral content. And very dignified.
We literally just grabbed a camera and we thought it would be for 40 of our friends, and then 183,000 views later, we're like, oh, wow. And it came from, so my husband's from Puerto Rico, and I'm a New Rican raised on the island of Manhattan, and here's this hurricane that's coming. At the time it was Mayor Bloomberg, and I'm freaking out because I've never had to contend with a hurricane. And my husband, who's been through so many of them, was like, that's nothing. And I'm watching the news, and I was fascinated by how Bloomberg was, and I understand, he was trying to keep it calm, but he was so dry. He's like, a hurricane's coming, and I'm like, dying. And what I was fascinated by was that he had his ASL translator. She wasn't in a box on the screen, on a TV screen. She wasn't in a small box. She wasn't below the podium. She was right next to him on the podium. She's sharing the same space. She's a woman. And I know that ASL translators have to be animated when they translate, but I saw it and I was like, that's Latina, because her neck went into second gear. You know, she had a flavor, an extra something to it. And to me, she was expressing how I was feeling. And Bloomberg had this thing, and God, bless him, he would speak in Spanish to Spanish-speaking
It's
audiences.
horrible.
But the most incredible thing was seeing this with my mom, and all of us going, eh?
Remember the Twitter?
Yeah.
Blumbito?
Blumbito,
Oh, it's
there's like a
hilarious.
Twitter of Michael, because
A fake Twitter
It was
in
so
Spanish.
bad, and so I thought, what is this Latina thinking? Standing next to him, hearing him speak Spanish, like, wow, that's really bad. Let her do it. But so that's where it all came about, and we were like, you know what? Let's just record it because it was like one of classic comedy. You know, it goes from 1 to 2 to 3, and you just go into insanity and levels with it.
I'm a big fan, as you can see. Now, Gisele, so you have it. I was about to say you have it uphill. No, I don't think so. You're good. You have your podcast, but how are you reaching out? What's happening? Do you think it's...
Well, now, yeah, I'm thinking about the next project. Always have to think about the next project. And social media, especially for journalists, is very useful. It's a tool for you to, spread your brand, to speak about the issues you care about. Of course, you have to be very careful about opinion in case of being a journalist. But I'm also a journalism professor. I teach journalism at Baruch College in New York, and I tell all my students you should be on all social media platforms. And a lot of my students don't have Twitter accounts and that. No, you have to open a Twitter account and you tweet during a class. Because as you apply for jobs, people look at that. Mm-hmm. I look at that when I'm hiring people. You look at what they've been tweeting about, Instagram, what they put on Facebook. That's your, it's your marketing tool. It's very important. Of course, can be a time sucker, and you have to be very careful about what you say and what not to overshare. But I think it's a powerful tool.
That's just because you're young and innocent. Be careful with what you post up there. No, I mean, give it a second thought, because that's how you're going to be perceived by people who don't know anything about you. So we have, what does that mean, 15 minutes?
You don't know the
No,
questions?
10 minutes? Okay, yes.
Right.
The last one, you going to say?
I live on social media. Because of papers and print, going out of business and comics pages shrinking, I distribute everything I do on, through the regular channels that my syndicate has a site called Go Comics. So they distribute my comics. You can sign up, get them for free, emailed to you every day. They'll tweet out my stuff. But I said I'm going to go full bore on all platforms. So I Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. I have pretty big social media following, no fake followers, all from the ground up. And I've got the best followers too. I have a ton of journalists and just lots of people that get lots of college people, and I get lots of jobs out of those, like speaking gigs and opportunities, and so I live and die by it. Also, I get attacked a lot, so that's the downside is you get open yourself up to that, and especially the stuff I say. I get attacked from white supremacists and racists and other Chicanos, of course, because who's better at hating Mexicans than other Mexicans? But I'll battle with them. I don't care. I tell them, come down to my house. I'm here.
Waiting for you.
Yeah.
Waiting for you to go.
Although I actually hide where I live. Usually these people don't have their faces on these things or their real names. But I have my name, my face, and my schedule is an open book, and they can always come and do whatever they want to me. But I'll be there waiting for them. But, so that it opens you up to that.
And speaking about opening, maybe we should give you guys time to ask some questions. So, who's going to be first? No pressure, but who's going to be first?
I actually have a question from an online audience question. There's lots of interest in this conversation today. We've had lots of folks commenting. But from Texas Latino Comic Con, what advice can you give to Latino content creators to get their work noticed?
It's for you.
If it's for me, I joked about this last night. I used to tell young comic book cartoonist artists, they would ask me, "What's your advice for us?" And I would say, first, stay out of my way. then show your work to everyone you can. And of course, now today you guys are spoiled. You have social media. You can post your cartoons on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, Twitter. You have no excuse because my least favorite thing is when a young artist would come. This happened a couple times. This kid came with his mom to me at an event, and they said, what advice do you have for my son? He likes to draw. I'm like, oh, well, let's see your stuff. And he goes, oh, no, I don't show my artwork because I don't want people to steal my ideas. They're so great, you know. And I go, well, you and your mommy should go in the closet and look at your comics, and that's where your comics will live forever, in the closet. Nobody will ever see them. Because that's not what being an artist is. Being an artist is putting your stuff out there and having people criticize it, trash it, and then if you're a real artist, if you're meant to do it, you go back and improve it and get better. And that goes for any art, goes for literature, performance, music. You know, go out there and stick your neck out, you know. So
if I could expand on that, I had back in 1990, wow, my God, before you were born, in the 90s, I made a short documentary, and I swear to God, we spent like $200. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to send it to the Berlin Film Festival. Who knows? They picked it up.
Huh.
And the lesson was, send your shit out. Send it out. I mean, you can have like an iron, like self-esteem, but we all have this moment of weakness. It's like, no, this is not good enough. It's too cheap. Just send it out and always aim high. Always, there you go. Always aim high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Write that down. Put it there. Alberto Ferreras. Always aim high. We just did, actually, I've been working with Shirley in these short films that are all ultra low budget, and the first one got accepted by Outfest. And it was, I swear to God, we spent nothing. We shot it in my apartment. We make it look like a drag bar. It worked. I don't know how. It worked. Don't hold yourself back. Nowadays, especially for content creators, there's amazing tools at your fingertips that nobody has ever had in history. You can edit a movie in your laptop.
On your phone.
Exactly.
You can just edit on your phone, too.
So that, I would say, aim high and don't be afraid to show it. What do you guys want to say?
Well,
Yes, so.
yeah, no,
Yes,
yes.
so.
I agree.
You agree?
Is there another question?
Well, the arts is usually deemed as unimportant, and sometimes people are told that they can't succeed in the arts with making a name of themselves. So I'm kind of asking you guys, what steps have you guys taken to get your name out there in the arts?
Good question. You should start.
I'm sorry, real fast. My thing has always been like I patch together. I think it's either do you really mean like instead of get your name out there is not starve to death and die in the gutter, right? Like I mean, just survive as an artist.
An A-lister.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be a working artist, it's like almost impossible, but it can be done, and you can patch things together and make it, and that. Even of itself is like a way to get your name out there, you know. So
by patching things together, that's what I meant to ask you. Make a name. Exactly. There's like the A-lister. But you can also be a working actor who may not necessarily be, you know, the marquee name. You do patch things together as an actor. You do commercials. Sometimes also working in the public schools, reading plays that kids write. There's different ways, different pathways to create revenue to survive and subsist. And then you also have, it's good to be a jack of a couple of trades. You have your office job or a day job or catering or bartender. And so you hustle and this is one of the things that's really neat about, that I remember seeing in the Latino community is how resourceful and resilient we have that grit that we can be, and you can apply that to your career as an artist. I mean, we can make $1 out of 15 cents. That's when times are rough, and we were recycling before recycling was a thing. So those skills you can apply to wanting to move further in your career, always with the hope that you want the source of your income to be strictly from your art. But there's many different avenues to go about it.
Yes.
We have one more question. I Eduardo Luna says, thanks for the talk at Smithsonian Latino Center. Could you please ask a question about what is the importance of a Latino arts organization in the Latino community? Gracias.
That's a very good question. I think some people rely more on established institutions than others. That's for sure. I'm one of those who don't so much. I'm a little bit of a lone rider in that sense, and yet we're here. So I'm gonna tell you.
Yeah.
What has been your
First place I landed in, went to work at in LA was a place called Self Help Graphics, and it was in East LA. It was a printmaking center, and it was created by a chain-smoking Italian-American nun who wanted to bring art to the barrio and to empower the community, which is why it's called Self-Help Graphics. And it empowered generations of Chicano artists, and it put East LA on the map. I mean, it made those prints that are made there have been exhibited all over the planet. I mean, they get your art. My artwork has been exhibited all over the planet thanks to Self-Help Graphics. It's gotten into collections or whatever. But it was because of that one little community center.
What's her name? Sister Karen?
Sister Karen Bocalero, yeah. And she's probably pissed right now that I call her a chain-smoking nun because she hated that. And then when I was a kid, I answered a PSA, which is a public service announcement on the cable access channel in San Diego for free mural painting classes at a Chicano art center called the Centro Cultural de la Raza, and that's where I met Chicano artists who were muralists who are still working to this day. And I was like 15, 16 years old, and before I would just tag on the walls, and then they taught me to get paid to paint on the walls, you know?
Well, now you mentioned that, I relied on the LGBT Center in New York. I took singing classes there. Everybody can sing, everybody should sing. Just so you know.
It's your voice.
It's your voice. And for me, the LGBT Center on 13th Street has been like a real refuge. Not only a place to learn, but also to meet people with the same vocation.
I think it's extremely important to create communities, to help fundraising, to give, elevate, put people together. I think it really helps.
I was a part of a children's theater, interstate children's theater program called the 52nd Street Project that worked with kids from Hell's Kitchen, and that was my second home, and that we learned to perform, and it empowered us. Our voices mattered. We wrote plays, adults came and performed, and that's where I saw middle-class working actors there, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is possible. But yeah, I think community in the arts is incredibly important for different avenues of empowerment.
You just came back from the leap. Anything that you want to report?
Oh, yeah, I was at the NALEAP conference, it's the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, and that group, that organization went from having for Latinos in Hollywood, it started out as like, really, I remember going to the very first ones, and it was guys giving each other business cards, broke guys asking each other for jobs, right, in Hollywood. And we're like, I don't know, I'm broke like you, And now it's like HBO sponsors it. Like we had, they gave an award to Zoe Saldana. Vin Diesel presented it. I gave an award to Jorge Gutierrez, who did Book of Life. He's my friend. And I made a couple deals in the in the thing, and now I'm the guy that people are asking for jobs. I'm like, I'm still broke, but I'm still hustling. But yeah, no, it's great. I mean, it's very organic. It exploded, and I didn't think I would get to see it in my lifetime. That we're actually becoming a little force in Hollywood.
There's another question.
There's one more online question which is coming. When you are creating something for mainstream, how do you attract non-Latino audiences to Latino themes?
So I think that in the specificity of telling a Latino story, you connect to the universal feelings of, and this is where empathy that we talked about, with hopes and fears and desires. So whether it's a Latina mom, I think someone who's not Latina that is a mom can relate to the struggles of raising a child and wanting that child to be successful and the fears involved with that. So I think when telling a Latino story and wanting it to be mainstream, the more you focus on the specifics of the story, of why the characters do what they do, of what their passions are, of what their joys are, that's going to transcend. Years ago, there was a film, My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It was very specifically Greek, idiosyncratic Greek, but my mom swore that a Puerto Rican wrote it. Like, no, that had to be a Puerto Rican who wrote that. But that's an example of how that can cross into mainstream.
In Border Town, the animated show, I was given the task of designing the Mexican family's home. And so I went on Facebook, I crowdsourced, I said, what do you remember from your stereotypical Mexican home of the 70s and 80s, right? So, you know, Virgen de Guadalupe, tortilleria calendar, 10 years out of date, like 20 crucifixes, family photo wall with other people's families, right? And like on and on, yeah, plastic covering on the couches.
That's a classic.
And yeah, that's a classic. And then from that, though, on the internet, I got people going like, well, I'm Italian American, and we had that in the 60s and 70s. And then black people would be like, we had plastic covered couch. And then, so we all came together over this plastic covered couch. Yeah, we're all poor. We're all saving our couches.
But I do think that the more personal the story is, the more universal it is, because deep inside we're all the same. My concern is when they're trying to turn something that is not Latino into Latino by just putting a sombrero on somebody. It's like, no, look, it's a Latino show. Hi. No, it's not.
Like that, yeah. That Rob show. Yeah. Lots of junk out there.
Good?
But.
Shall we? Okay, we're about to wrap this. Lovely. Do we have to read any of these again?
No.
All right, guys. Well, you didn't ask any question. No, you did. Good for you.
Yeah.
All right, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Congratulations.
Thank you.